Hello.
I cheated on my husband, but what really caught me off guard was how he reacted. Let me back up a bit. She swears it was never meant to be serious. Just a harmless distraction, or so she thought. We'd been together 10 years, married for 6. Our son, Caleb, had just turned 6, and things at home were, well, typical. Nothing out of the ordinary. You know the kind of normal I mean, the kind where life just drifts by on autopilot. I work as an architect, decent job, steady paycheck, all the basics covered. She's in marketing for some mid-sized tech company. It's not flashy, but it keeps the lights on. Every day was pretty much the same. I'd leave for work, she'd do the same, and we'd both come home in the evening, share the chores, wrangle Caleb through his nighttime routine, and eventually crawl into bed. It was comfortable. Or at least I thought so. Then, about 9 months ago, I got promoted. Big deal for me, one of those career milestones I'd been grinding toward for years. She smiled, said all the right things, told me she was proud. And I believe she meant it. But with that promotion came longer hours, more stress, and a ton of extra responsibility. I started spending most nights at the office. At first, she figured I was just trying to prove myself, that I'd find my rhythm and things would ease up. But that day never came. Instead, it got worse. I'd get home late, exhausted, barely able to mutter a hey before collapsing on the couch. Some nights I didn't even make it to our bedroom. I'd just pass out in my work clothes, right there in the living room, like some machine that had finally short-circuited. She kept hoping it was just a phase. So did I, honestly. But weeks turned into months, and the distance between us just kept growing. It wasn't only the emotional gap she started noticing. She'd reach out in that way married couples do when they're trying to reconnect, quiet moments in the bedroom, subtle touches, and I'd respond with half-closed eyes and mumbled promises of maybe tomorrow. Except tomorrow never came. She started feeling invisible. Not just physically shut out, but emotionally left behind. To her, it felt like she'd become a background character in my life, something I only noticed when it needed handling. And that began to eat away at her. She was craving connection, any kind of real attention, and just wasn't getting it from me. Around that same time, things picked up at her job too. They were chasing this high-stakes client named Derek. He owned a boutique financial consulting firm, and landing his business could have meant a major win for her company. Her boss, in that vague, corporate way, told her to go the extra mile with him. You know, be warm, relatable, build a connection. Not overstep, but definitely blur the lines a bit. So she leaned into it. Started spending more time with Derek, lunches, casual chats, little gestures to show he mattered. She told herself it was all part of the job. But Derek turned out to be surprisingly easy to be around. He was in his late 40s, divorced, no kids. Not her type, but charming in a laid-back kind of way. He cracked jokes, lightened the mood, actually listened when she talked. And that felt like oxygen to someone who'd been suffocating in silence. One lunch stood out. She'd had a hell of a morning wrangling Caleb. Work was chaos, and to top it off, she spilled water on her shirt during the meal. She laughed it off, embarrassed, but when she glanced up, Derek was looking at her not in a sleazy way, but with this quiet intensity that made her feel noticed. She hadn't felt that in months. At first, she brushed it off, told herself she was overthinking it, that it was harmless, just a friendly look. But deep down, it stirred something in her she'd almost forgotten was there. Their conversations slowly shifted. He started asking about her life, not just work, but home too. She didn't spill everything, but she dropped a few hints about things being rough between us. He listened, nodded, and gave her that soft, knowing look. And she liked that. A lot more than she wanted to admit. Soon, their lunches became regular. Occasionally, they'd even meet for dinner. And she started looking forward to those moments. Because with Derek, she didn't have to fake anything. She could just be herself. She didn't have to pretend the marriage was fine or force a smile through exhaustion. And I get it. That kind of attention, when you've been starved for it, can feel like a drug. She says now she wasn't proud of how good it felt to know someone still found her attractive. That someone still wanted to hear her stories, her frustrations, her day. It was subtle at first. Nothing physical. Just a spark. But it grew. And she didn't stop it. Didn't pull back. Didn't come talk to me. She just leaned into the warmth of being seen again. And before she knew it, the line she swore she'd never cross was behind her, and she was standing on the wrong side of it. She says she didn't even realize it was happening at the time. But looking back, it's so obvious. That's the thing about these moments, they don't start with fireworks. They start with little flickers you tell yourself are harmless. Until they're not. It was one of those familiar lunches with Derek again. By now, we'd had more of those than I'd care to admit, definitely more than what was necessary for work. But let's be real, this wasn't about the client anymore. Not for me. Those meetings had become my escape. Something I genuinely looked forward to. Something that made me feel, well, like a person again. And I hadn't felt that in a long, long time. I can still picture that day clearly. It had been a rough night. I'd really tried, to talk to Nathan about us, about how distant we'd become. But he barely looked up from whatever was on his mind. I even asked him straight out if he still found me attractive. He just blinked at me like I'd asked him if the sky was blue, then muttered something about being tired. That moment crushed me in a way I can't even put into words. Just this hollow, sinking feeling in my chest I couldn't shake. And that's the weight I brought with me when I sat down across from Derek that afternoon. I was worn out, frustrated, numb, and craving something I couldn't get at home. So I started talking, not directly about Nathan, but close. I vented a little. Derek just listened. He wasn't distracted, wasn't half scrolling through his phone or nodding aimlessly. He was present. He laughed at my dumb little jokes, sympathized when I complained about work stress, and actually cared about what I was saying. And I'm not going to lie, it felt amazing. At one point, I knocked over my water glass. Just tipped the whole thing like an idiot. Derek laughed, made a joke about one of those days, and reached over to help clean it up with some napkins. His hand brushed mine, and for a split second, everything froze. It was probably innocent, just an accidental touch, but I felt this jolt run through me. My face went hot, and I'm pretty sure he noticed, because suddenly his smile changed. It softened, almost like he meant for that to happen. Then he said, "It's nice talking to someone who actually listens." I didn't respond. Just nodded, feeling something shift between us, like the entire room had gone quiet except for the space between him and me. That's when I should have cut things off, redirected the conversation, wrapped it up, stood up, and left. But I didn't. We kept talking. And with every laugh, every look, that invisible line between professional and personal started to fade. He gave me something I hadn't felt in ages, a little spark, a sense of being seen, and I didn't want that to end. After lunch, we walked to the parking lot together. Normally, this would be the point where we'd exchange a polite goodbye and go on with our day. But that time, we lingered. Neither of us moved. The silence was thick, tense. Like we both knew exactly where this was heading, but no one wanted to say it first. Then Derek looked at me and asked, "Want to come over for a coffee?" Simple question. But it wasn't really about coffee, and we both knew that. I paused. Ran through every reason in my head why I should say no. Every red flag. Every warning bell. But instead of thinking about what was right, all I could focus on was how much I didn't want to go back to that quiet, lonely house. So I said yes. The drive to his place is a blur. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel, heart pounding, telling myself over and over it was just coffee. That I could leave any time. But if I'm being honest, I knew exactly what I was doing. When we got there, it all felt weirdly unreal. Like I was floating outside my body, watching someone else live this moment. He poured me a cup of coffee. We sat on the couch. Talked. But it wasn't casual anymore. Every word felt heavy, like there was this unspoken layer beneath everything we said. At some point, he moved in closer, just slightly, and suddenly I could feel the warmth of his arm brushing mine. I turned my head, met his eyes, and before I knew it, he leaned in and kissed me. And I didn't stop him. I didn't pull away. I let it happen. Because in that moment, everything that had been weighing me down, the rejection, the emotional distance, the feeling of being invisible, it all disappeared. We ended up in his bedroom. It wasn't wild or frantic or anything out of a movie. It was slow, quiet, like we were both figuring it out as we went, cautiously but with a purpose neither of us dared say out loud. And I remember lying there afterward, a storm of emotion churning inside me, excitement, guilt, confusion, shame. I knew what I'd done. I knew it was wrong. But I didn't care enough to stop it when I had the chance. Because for once, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. I felt real. I felt wanted. But once the moment passed, the weight came crashing back. I stared at the ceiling, my stomach twisted in knots. All I could think was, what the hell have I just done? I got dressed as quietly as I could. Derek was half asleep, and I didn't want to wake him. I just needed to get out, to breathe, to think. As I stepped outside, I glanced at my phone, 5 missed calls from Nathan. My heart dropped. Panic kicked in. I started scrambling for an excuse, any believable reason why I hadn't picked up. The drive home was a haze. I kept rehearsing explanations in my head, my hands still shaking on the wheel. By the time I got to the house, I felt like I was walking into a lion's den. I half expected Nathan to be waiting in the hallway, demanding to know everything. But he wasn't. He was asleep, like always. Clueless. I went straight to the bathroom, locked the door behind me, and just stared at my own reflection. Something looked different. Or maybe I just felt different. I splashed water on my face, trying to rinse off the guilt, but it clung to me like oil. I could feel it in my skin. I had crossed a line. There was no undoing it. No pretending it hadn't happened. That night, lying in bed beside him, I kept whispering to myself that it was a one-time mistake. A stupid lapse in judgment. But deep down, I knew that was a lie. I knew I'd see Derek again. The days that followed were a blur. I tried diving back into work, into parenting, into pretending everything was fine. But something had split inside me. Part of me was desperate to forget. The other part couldn't stop replaying it, all of it, in vivid detail, like some addictive little secret. I kept swearing to myself it was just a moment. A mistake. A one and done. But then, one afternoon around lunchtime, my phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Coffee again? 2 words. Just 2. And I already knew I wasn't done. I stared at my phone, heart pounding way too fast for what was supposedly just a casual coffee invite. It felt ridiculous, and yet, there it was, that same electric buzz, like I was some teenager sneaking around again. Before I could second-guess myself, I tapped out a reply. Sure. We met at this out-of-the-way cafe, tucked on the far side of town, the kind of place I knew I wouldn't run into anyone from our neighborhood or office. And the moment I walked in and saw Derek sitting there, smiling like I was the only person in the room, all that guilt I'd been drowning in just, shut up. I know how that sounds. But at that point, I was chasing something I hadn't felt in so long, that sensation of being seen, wanted. And across from him, for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt alive. We kept things casual at first. We talked about our workloads, the usual complaints about clients, deadlines. Surface-level stuff. But even then, I could feel it, this unspoken tension hovering between us, like we were both carefully stepping around the obvious. Then he looked up and asked, "Do you regret the other night?" That stopped me cold. I dropped my eyes to my coffee cup, stirring it like I was searching for the answer at the bottom. Part of me wanted to say yes, to say I regretted it and meant it. But the truth? I didn't. Not completely. I felt bad, sure. But I couldn't bring myself to wish it had never happened. Not when it made me feel like someone still thought I mattered. I don't know, I said finally, hoping maybe he'd let it go. But he didn't. Instead, he reached across the table and rested his hand on mine right there, plain as day, in the middle of a busy cafe. My heart jumped. I looked around, afraid someone might see, but no one was paying attention. It was like the world had blurred, leaving just the two of us sitting in that moment, pretending this was normal. Pretending nothing was wrong with holding hands like this wasn't dangerous. And then he leaned in and whispered, "Let's go somewhere else." That should have been my wake-up call. My cue to get up, walk away, and shut it down. But instead, I stood up and followed him out the door. We ended up back at his place, and everything that happened after that, it's hard to explain. It was intense, overwhelming, wrong, and thrilling all at once. And I knew I'd gone past the point of return. I'd let myself fall into something I wasn't strong enough to stop. Later that night, walking back into my house, it felt like I was dragging 90 pounds of guilt behind me. I kept thinking maybe, just maybe, I'd see Nathan and feel something, some spark, some warmth that would snap me out of this. But the house was silent. Nathan was sitting on the couch, face lit by his phone screen, and he didn't even glance up when I walked by. I tried. I really did. I asked how his project was going, how things were at work, anything to get a conversation going, to feel like we still had something between us. He answered, but it was like I wasn't even there. His words were clipped, eyes barely leaving the screen. That's when it hit me, the brutal, hollow truth. I was alone. Alone in my own marriage, in my own home. This wasn't just about being tired or busy anymore. We'd stopped being a team somewhere along the way. Now we were just two people sharing a roof, each stuck in our own world. That night I lay in bed, simmering with a twisted mix of guilt and anger. Guilt for what I was doing. Anger that he didn't seem to care enough to notice. And yet, every time I closed my eyes, I saw Derek. Heard his voice telling me I was worth something. That feeling like someone actually wanted me, it became this emotional life raft I clung to, even though I knew it was dragging me deeper. A few days went by, and I told myself I had to end it. That I needed to stop seeing Derek before things spiraled completely out of control. But then, just like that, I was back in his office. We were talking numbers, logistics, timelines, like nothing had ever happened. Like we were two professionals doing our jobs. But the moment we started wrapping up, he gave me that look again. The one that saw straight through every lie I'd been telling myself. Then he asked, quietly but directly, "Are we really going to keep pretending this is just about work?" I didn't have an answer. Because the second he said it, I felt that same magnetic pull again, stronger than ever. And before I could stop myself, we were tangled up in each other once more. Every rational thought in my brain was screaming at me to get up, to walk away, to fix this. But I didn't move, because in that moment, the rush of it all drowned everything else out. When it was over, we just sat there. The silence was thick with everything we couldn't say. Finally, Derek broke it. "I know this can't go on," he said, his voice low. "It's going to blow up sooner or later." And I knew he was right. But neither of us wanted it to stop. As I left his office that day, I felt this strange cocktail of fear and adrenaline, like I was living two completely separate lives. There was the life with Nathan and Caleb, dinners, bedtime routines, family obligations. And then there was the secret life. The one with Derek. The one where I felt like I could actually breathe. That night, I tried to pull myself together. I made dinner, helped Caleb with homework, did all the usual mom stuff. Tried to wear the mask of normal. But inside, my head was a mess. Derek was all I could think about. The next time I'd see him. The next rush. The next moment I'd feel like I mattered. And that terrified me. Because by then, I wasn't just slipping, I was sinking. And even though I kept telling myself I could stop any time I wanted, I knew I was lying. Things started unraveling fast after that. I was constantly trying to balance on this razor's edge, juggling my home life while sneaking off to see Derek whenever I could. I knew I was playing with fire. But every time I thought about ending it, I felt that same pull. Like I was addicted to being wanted. Eventually, even Nathan began to notice. He didn't come right out and ask, but the comments started, quiet ones, sharp around the edges. Working late again? You seem distracted. Little things. Probes. Like he was testing me. Like he was starting to suspect, but wasn't ready to confront the truth. And I didn't know how much longer I could keep lying. I tried to play it cool, act like everything was fine, but looking back, I wasn't nearly as smooth as I thought. It was a Friday, and lunch with Derek had gone way longer than planned. I pulled into the driveway feeling that usual mix of guilt and adrenaline, only to find something off the second I stepped inside. Nathan was already home. He was sitting on the couch, but not like he usually did, no phone in hand, no TV on in the background. Just sitting, waiting. The look on his face was hard to read, calm, but not in a good way. And immediately, I felt my stomach twist into a knot. Something was wrong. I just didn't know what yet. I tried to keep things light. Hey, you're home early, I said, heading to drop my bag like it was just another day. Hoping, praying, he'd let it go. But he didn't. We need to talk, he said. His voice was low, steady, and way too calm. That kind of calm that tells you it's about to get bad. I sat down across from him, trying to keep my expression neutral even though my heart was slamming in my chest. I didn't want to assume anything. Maybe it was about Caleb or work stress or something harmless. But the way he was looking at me, I already knew. Where were you today? He asked, eyes locked on mine like he was daring me to lie. And in that moment, I knew. He knew. I felt the heat rise in my face, but I forced my voice to stay even. I was at work, same as always. I hated how hollow it sounded coming out of my mouth. He didn't blink. Really? Because I stopped by your office around lunch. Thought maybe we could grab something to eat. Then he paused. They told me you'd already left. So, where were you? My mind went blank. I hadn't seen that coming. Nathan showing up at my office? That was completely out of character. He'd never done that before. Every excuse I could think of crumbled before I could even reach for them. I went to meet with a client, I said, voice shaky. Last minute thing. It wasn't anything major. He leaned back on the couch, arms folded, just studying me. Funny, he said quietly. Because I saw you. With him. Everything inside me just stopped. He saw us. I didn't know where or how much he'd seen, but it didn't matter. He knew. There was no talking my way out of it. No clever spin. Nothing. I just sat there, frozen, while the silence between us felt like it was screaming. Nathan shook his head slowly and let out this uneven breath, like he was trying to hold himself together. How long? He asked. His voice was barely a whisper. I wanted to lie. I wanted to say it was nothing. A slip. One time. But I couldn't. Not now. A couple of months, I said quietly, each word landing like a brick in the room. He didn't respond right away. Just stared at me like he was searching for something in my face, some clue, some reason. Some way to make sense of it all. And then I saw it. The hurt. It was worse than anger. Worse than yelling. That quiet, hollow kind of pain in his eyes, like something inside him had cracked. Why? He asked. That single word just hung there. And I didn't have a good answer. How do you explain that you felt invisible in your own marriage? That you were so desperate to be seen, to feel something, you threw away everything that mattered? I don't know, I mumbled, sounding pathetic even to myself. I felt alone. Like you were just gone. Like I was just part of the background. Part of your routine. He laughed, short and bitter. So, it's my fault, he snapped. Because I was working? Because I was trying to give us a stable life where we didn't have to worry about money. No, I said quickly, shaking my head. No, it's not your fault. I messed up. I know that. He stood up and started pacing, dragging his hands through his hair like he didn't know what to do with himself. I thought we were okay, he said, more to himself than to me. I mean, yeah, we had stuff to work through. but I thought we'd get through it. I never thought you'd. He stopped short. Couldn't even finish the sentence. And me? I just sat there. All those moments I told myself didn't matter. All the texts, the lies, the stolen afternoons, they came rushing back like a wave ready to drown me. I trusted you, he said, voice low, breaking. I thought we were partners. Hearing that, God, it hurt. More than I expected. I wanted to reach out, say something that would fix it, but there was nothing. No words could fix what I'd broken. Is it over? He asked, staring me down again. And now I could see the anger bubbling underneath the pain. Yes, I said right away. It's over. It has to be. Even if I'd clung to some part of it, some feeling that Derek gave me, I knew it was done. I had to let it go. Nathan gave a slow nod. Didn't speak. Just sat there, quiet, maybe trying to absorb it all. The silence between us felt like a chasm, wide, deep, and impossible to cross. Then he looked up again, and this time his face held more than sadness. There was something softer, more fragile. Do you even want to fix this? He asked. And his voice, it cracked, just slightly. That broke me. Yes, I whispered. I do. I don't want to lose you. But the look on his face told me it wouldn't be that simple. Maybe it never could be. I'd broken something in him, in us, and I had no idea if it could ever be put back together. He didn't say another word, just nodded again, like that was all he needed to hear. Then he stood up and walked out of the room, leaving me there alone, staring into the wreckage I'd created. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, wondering how everything had unraveled so fast. After that conversation, things didn't just get worse, they fell apart completely. Nathan didn't ask for time. He didn't ask for space. He told me to leave. Said he couldn't look at me anymore. That it was over. For good. And then came the part that hit me the hardest. He said he was filing for divorce and that he'd be going for full custody of Caleb. He looked me straight in the eyes when he said it. Said that if I didn't agree to give up my rights, he'd tell Caleb everything. He'd make sure our son knew exactly how his mom had betrayed his dad. The moment Nathan said those words, that he'd tell Caleb everything if I didn't give up custody, I knew he meant it. And that scared me more than anything else ever had. I couldn't risk that. I couldn't let my son grow up hating me, looking at me like I was some villain who wrecked his family. So I gave in. I signed the papers. Full custody, the house, everything. I handed it all to Nathan like I was signing away pieces of my life one by one. He didn't even give me a chance to explain things to Caleb, to say goodbye properly, to soften the blow. He just took it. And if that wasn't enough, he called my sister, Rachel. I don't know if he asked her to come or if she offered, but when she showed up, it was clear she was already on his side. She walked in like she had a mission. And she didn't waste time. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Like she didn't recognize me anymore. Then she let me have it. Told me I was selfish. That I'd destroyed everything. Said I didn't deserve to be Caleb's mother. It was like she had this speech locked and loaded, like she'd been waiting for the right moment to tear me apart. And the worst part? I didn't even fight back. I just stood there and took it. Every word chipped away at me until I felt about 2 inches tall. Then she turned to Nathan and asked him if there was anything else she could do to help. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just here to support him. She was here to stay. She wasn't just stepping in. She was stepping up, taking my place, becoming part of their life. I felt like I was standing on the outside of a home I used to live in, peering through the windows at the life I'd just been erased from. I left that night. Rachel didn't. She stayed, moved in, started helping with Caleb. Just like that, she slipped into the role I used to have, making dinner, picking him up from school, probably tucking him into bed. It was surreal. Like I'd been erased from my own family photo. No husband. No son. No sister. Nothing. After the divorce, it all unraveled fast. For a moment, I thought maybe Derek would be there for me. Maybe he'd show up, help me through the fallout. But the second he found out I wasn't married anymore, he disappeared. No texts. Barely returned my calls. It didn't take long to figure out the truth. He'd been seeing other women the entire time. I was just a side story. A distraction. Some cheap thrill to pass the time. I'd thrown away my whole life for someone who never even saw me as more than a fling. I used to think Derek made me feel seen. That he gave me something Nathan didn't. But in the end, he just used me and tossed me aside the second I became inconvenient. Then came the final blow. Nathan didn't just take Caleb. Or the house. He went after my job too. Somehow, he let my company know about the affair. That I'd crossed a professional line with a client. They didn't fire me, but in a way, what they did was worse. They stripped me of all my major accounts, slashed my salary, and tucked me away in some back-office role that barely mattered. They told me I was damaging the company's image, that I should feel lucky they hadn't let me go. And, just like that, I had nothing. No marriage. No child. No real job. It was like my whole world collapsed in a matter of weeks. I kept telling myself I'd get back on my feet, that I'd figure it out. But every time I tried to rebuild something, it felt like another wave came crashing in to knock it all down again. Nathan did agree to let me see Caleb. But only in public places, parks, coffee shops. Never at the house. I'd put on a smile, try to keep things light for Caleb's sake. But every time I had to say goodbye and watch him walk away, it felt like someone was reaching inside and tearing out a piece of me. I didn't feel like his mom anymore. I felt like a guest in his life. Then one day, during one of those visits, Caleb said something that gutted me. He mentioned, so casually it almost didn't register, that he saw Aunt Rachel coming out of Daddy's room late at night. I froze. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want him to feel uncomfortable or confused. So I just nodded and changed the subject. But inside, I was dying. My sister. Sleeping with my ex-husband. Living in the house I used to call home. A few weeks later, I got the email. It was from Nathan. They were engaged. He was marrying Rachel. I stared at the screen, feeling the last thread of my old life finally snap. Husband. Gone. Son. Slipping further away. Sister. Betrayed me. Career. Damaged beyond repair. Everything I'd built was gone, handed over to the people who replaced me without missing a beat. And I had no one to blame but myself. This was the mess I created. These were the consequences I never thought I'd have to face. Karma didn't just come for me, it came swinging. And the brutal truth? I earned it. Every bit of it. I tossed aside everything that mattered for a cheap, fleeting thrill. Something that wasn't even real. Now, I'm just trying to survive. Trying to crawl out of the hole I dug for myself. I keep telling myself there has to be a path forward. Some way to rebuild. To make things right. But deep down, I'm not sure. I don't know if I'll ever get back what I lost. All I know is I've got to keep moving. One day at a time.
Bye-bye.